I'm not a researcher in strawberry, but I did my research during graduate school. And right now, as technical service in Hort Americas, I'm in charge of putting out all the information that we have available that we know is good. Most of the information that I'm presenting is from Dr. Sherry Kubota. She was also my advisor when I was at graduate school. So let's learn a little bit about hydroponic production for strawberry. So first of all, what is the advantage of using hydroponics? First, we don't need land, and we can have more control over the root zone, which is the topic that I will be explaining today. We will be learning about the use of substrates and the chemicals and physical properties that will impact the development of strawberry. So when we use substrate and we use nutrients within the water, we are able to have better control in the root zone. That will make that will provide more consistency to our production and is more predictable. So let's start learning about the physical and chemical properties. I will start with the physical properties. First of all, this crop is really sensitive. I will say that this crop is more sensitive than, for example, tomato or cucumber to the root zone, and there are some specifications that are usually different from other crops. So the physical properties are porosity, water holding capacity, drainage, and volume. So starting with porosity, when we speak about porosity, we speak about the volume of air that we have at the root zone. And this is a very important topic for strawberry. We know that a strawberry likes porosity, so when we are looking for a substrate, we need to look for a substrate that is high in porosity. Here we have an experiment done by Dr. Sherry Kubota with two different cultivars, Camino Real and Albion. All of them were grown under the same environmental conditions, just the substrate is different. So you can get to notice the impact of the substrate in the development of the plant. For example, here we have coconut coir, which we know is a very common substrate for strawberry. So we can see that here the plant doesn't look like very happy, but there is a reason for this. So if you are thinking about using coconut coir, we need to look for a coconut coir that is made for strawberries or berries, which will be a coconut coir high in porosity. So strawberries require about 15% of air porosity at the root zone and 60% water holding capacity. So the water holding capacity is the amount of water that the substrate can take, and this is for most of the crops. I mean, when we are doing hydroponics, we are looking to have about 60% of water holding capacity. But what is different about this crop is the air porosity that we usually have. I mean, if you buy, for example, a slab that is usually used for tomato, you probably won't get good results. So let's speak about some of the substrates that we use to promote porosity. We can do mix of different substrates. For example, this is perlite, which is recognized for high porosity. And the substrate should retain about 50 to 65%. The porosity in the substrate is also going to help us to have good drainage, which is really important for a strawberry. When you look for containers or if you are using the slabs, you need also to think about the drainage. For example, the containers that we can find, for example, in Hort Americas we have the one from Beacon Camp. The container will be a better pot for drainage. So speaking about some substrates, we have first coconut coir. The reason we use coconut coir for strawberry, first of all, is that when we grow strawberries hydroponically, we usually have an open system with substrate. We know that this plant likes substrate. I know that there are different kind of growing systems that we use in hydroponics, but based on experiments and the yield that we get, when we use substrates, we can get to reach higher yields. So when we are using high amount of volume for substrate, we'll obviously look for low price, like good price, and this is something that we can find in coconut coir. So in order to be able to use coconut coir, we need to find a coconut coir that is specific developed for strawberries or berries. This will be usually a coconut coir that will have higher porosity. And this substrate can retain salts. This is very important to know because when we are doing irrigation in hydroponics, we need to check the drip, which is everything that is going in, and the drainage, which is what is going out. So when you are irrigating the plant, you are providing salts, which are nutrients. So by the end, in the drainage, we need to check also for pH and electrical conductivity, which is the amount of salts. When we check the drainage, we always need to check, when we're using coconut coir, the EC levels, because sometimes it can tend to retain salts. I will speak a little bit more when getting to the electrical conductivity part. So another substrate that we can use for a strawberry is peat moss. We usually use peat moss as a mix with different substrates. The characteristics about this substrate is good. It has low porosity, so if we're using peat moss, we need to mix the, like for example, with perlite. And it's generally acid, which is good for a strawberry because the pH of a strawberry is should be between 5.5 and 6, so it's technically low pH, so we can help to provide the pH that the plant needs with the substrate, in this case with peat moss. And perlite is the option of substrate that we can have to provide porosity. There are some people that use only perlite for substrate in strawberries, but I don't think it's the best option because perlite is really high in porosity and it has a lot of drainage. So when you have an open system, that means that you need to irrigate with new nutrient solution every time. So if you have a lot of drainage, you will need more irrigation. That means more water. So here is a recipe developed by the Dr. Sherry Kubota. So this is 50% perlite to provide porosity, 25% coconut coir, this will be like regular coconut coir, and 25% peat moss. So this is a good mix that it was already tested with good results for strawberry. Of course, we can also find different brands that are selling substrates for strawberries. I will say and repeat that if you are looking for a coconut coir mix, you need to ask to the person that is selling the product if this product was tested before for berries or it was developed for berries. And remember, it should have around 15% porosity. Irrigation. So let's move to irrigation, which is important for a strawberry, and that is why we recommend the use of substrate when doing hydroponics with this plant. So strawberry doesn't like to have a lot of water and then no water. For example, I have speak with people that is using a sub-irrigated system. So that is not good for a strawberry. The best way to irrigate this plant will be with drip irrigation. It's providing a small amount of water per event of irrigation. So the recommendation is to provide around 30 milliliters per plant. And of course, I cannot provide the exact quantity of water that you need to provide inside of your greenhouse or high tunnel, because it will depend on the radiation, humidity, and temperature that we have inside. But I can share an example. You can do like 6 to 12 irrigations events per day, which would be about 200 to 400 milliliters of water per plant. And of course, this will totally depend on your environmental conditions. And a way to know if we already have like enough water in our plants is one, you can check the humidity of the substrate. And the other option is to check the drainage. So we are looking for 20 to 30% of the drainage. And as I mentioned, when we grow strawberries using substrates and drip irrigation, we will have an open system, meaning that we need to provide new nutrient solution every time. So how can we do this in a very practical way? Imagine that we have like all the nutrient solution ready to develop to our plants. That will be like a big pond, right? Because we need to provide new nutrient solution every day. So what we do is we use injectors. So the injector would be a system that can help you to have your nutrient solution in a concentrated way. For this, we will need to have two different tanks. So every time that you are providing nutrients to your plants, and you are doing a recipe, when you check like a full recipe for a strawberry or any crop, you will notice that it says tank 1 and tank 2. By the end, I will have my email, and if you want to have the full recipe, I can share that with you. So tank 1 and tank 2 is very important to respect that, because when you have the formula concentrated, you cannot mix everything. If you mix all the ingredients, you can have some precipitation. So when we use injectors, we need to split the formula in two different tanks. We will have a third tank that will be for acid. This is to provide the pH that we need for a strawberry. And the injectors will be in charge to dilute the nutrient solution and make it like ready to go for our plants. So that is what is important for irrigation. Now, speaking about the substrate that we will be providing, we need to think about two characteristics. The first one is drainage, and the other one is the substrate porosity and the substrate quantity that we need for the plant. So based on research, we know that the plant will do better if we provide 2 liters of substrate per plant. So that is what we need to provide if you're using slabs, or if you're using, for example, the strawberry containers. We will think about that. It's not like you can put, for example, 10 plants per linear meter, but it will depend on the container. So let's try always to provide at least 2 liters per plant. And this will speak a lot about the growing system that we can use for a strawberry. I know that we can have towers, we can have like NFT systems, but think about the growing system that will allow you to provide 2 liters of substrate per plant. I know, like, meaning that you cannot use other growing systems, but if you are looking to have good yield, which will be about 1.2 kilos per plant in 7 months production, you need to provide like all the characteristics. And sometimes some growing systems are not ideal to reach higher yields. And speaking about bags versus trucks, I really like more when we're using the containers, because the bags, they tend to, the shape is not, it will not maintain the same. So we can have better drainage and maintain the height of the pot when we're using the containers. So these are the containers that we have in Hort Americas from Beacon Camp, and these are the brands that we can use for the drainage. So we usually put the container on top of another container that will catch the drainage. Of course, for this we need to have like a slope to be able to collect all the drainage at the end. In an open system, we don't tend to reuse that, but we need to collect that in order to check if our plants are doing well. Moving to chemical properties. So the chemical properties, the most important are nutrient content, of course, electrical conductivity, pH, and cation exchange capacity. So nutrient requirement. Strawberries are kind of different to other crops in terms of the amount of nutrients that we need to provide, and that is good because that means less fertilizer. In comparison to tomato or cucumbers. So here we have a good recipe also from Dr. Sherry Kubota This is the Yamasaki formula. And in here, you will check all the major elements and the ppm that we need to provide. We have two different formulas that I can share with you, the fruit production and also one for runner production. So of course, this is not like the full formula. This is just getting an idea of the amount of nutrients that we have. So if you want to have the complete formula, you can send an email. And these are the minor elements. And usually we can use two different formulas. At least for the Yamasaki formula, we use the same one for the whole cycle. I know that there are other options that will change, but the Yamasaki do well for the whole cycle. If you want to promote runner production, you need to increase nitrogen. Electrical conductivity. So electrical conductivity is the amount of salts that we are getting to our plants. The higher salt content, the higher electrical conductivity. So electrical conductivity is a very small number that will fluctuate between 1 or 3 in different crops. But for a strawberry, it's different. For a strawberry, we will try to reach a really low EC level. So in terms of a strawberry, the highest level that we recommend is 1. So that is hard to get. Why? Because we have a water source, and sometimes the water source already contains salts, right? So it's very important for a strawberry to check the water source that we're using. So right now I'm consulting some people that is growing in greenhouse, and it's very common to have problems with nutrition because we don't test the water source. I mean, you need to test the water source in order to know what the water source contains, because the nutrition of a strawberry includes like very small quantity of salts. And salts will get stress to the plant. So I will teach you how to check your water source. For the crops that require low salts, or if you are working in a closed system in hydroponics when we reuse the water many times, we will look for electrical conductivity of that will be below 1, of course, and it will be around 0.25 microsiemens. If you have more salts, you will have higher pH. So this is really easy to notice in your water source. If you have your water source and you have a sensor that measures pH, and you notice that the pH is high, probably your water has a lot of salts. So for a strawberry, we recommend an EC level of 1. If the EC level exceeds 1.2, we recommend to irrigate with water. So that is how this plant is like really sensitive to salts. If in the drainage you are getting more than 1.2, that could be related to salts that are accumulated in your substrate. So we can irrigate with water. So what about the water source? If you send your water for a test, what are the things that we need to check? So the things that we need to check first is alkalinity, which is the amount of salts, electrical conductivity, and pH. So this is very good information. When you get the results from the water source, you can come to this slide and compare. So first, the pH should be around these numbers, and alkalinity, which is really important because alkalinity is the amount of salts, and in this case, is the most common problem that we have sometimes in the water source. So alkalinity should be below 100 ppm. In case you have more than 100 ppm, we can do a treatment that doesn't include the use of reverse osmosis, that we know that is expensive. So reverse osmosis is needed when we have like a lot of different salts. If we are like high in a lot of salts, then we will need to have filters and all those kind of stuff. But if only alkalinity, which are carbonates, are high, we can do a treatment with acid before starting our production. So alkalinity is the amount of calcium carbonate, and we can get rid of this of calcium carbonate by using acid. How? There are two options. We can use acidic fertilizers. When you check a formula for different crops, there are two ways to provide nitrogen. One is ammonium, and the other one is nitrate. So when our fertilizer is ammonium-based, that in hydroponics will tend to reduce the pH, and will tend to also eliminate carbonates. But this is not the most common way that we usually use. The most common way is to treat your water with acid. Sulfuric acid, phosphoric acid, nitric acid are some acid that we can use in order to reduce the carbonates. So this is just explaining ammonium will tend to reduce the pH of the root zone, and nitrate will tend to increase the pH of the root zone. So usually for a strawberry, we look for a formula that has both, so we can have better control in the pH. Okay, and this is also a great source. If you have your results of the water, of your water test, and you know that the carbonates are high, I mean alkalinity is high, you can come to this webpage, which is really nice, and you can put in here your data. You can target alkalinity or a pH that will be around 5, and you can submit sample, and you will get the amount of acid that you need to use. So you don't need to look for an advice for this. You can just introduce the data, and you will get how do you need to treat your water. So this is great resource. If we have high EC, like involving a lot of different elements, we will need to have filters and reverse osmosis. And this is really important because working with growers, sometimes we have problems because they don't want to correct the water source. And what will happen if you have already salts in your water and you put in your nutrients that you see that the formula is requiring, you will end up with an EC that is higher, right? And what would we do? To add water to try to dilute, right? And we will end with a formula that is nothing to be with the real formula. So I have some growers that have like that kind of problem, so don't do that. We need to test the water, we need to treat the water in case is needed in order to get good results. Now, pH is also important for a strawberry, and it's kind of a little different for other crops. So pH can affect the ability of the plant to take nutrients. So if we are not in the correct pH, we can see nutrient deficiencies. So it's very important when you see nutrient deficiencies in your plants, the first thing that you need to do is to check the pH, because maybe the nutrients are in there. I mean, maybe your formula is correct, but if the pH is not within the recommended levels, you will have deficiencies. So in hydroponic systems, it's normal to see an increase in pH. That is normal for traditional hydroponics. In organics will be a little different. So it's normal. If you see an increment in pH, will be normal. But for a strawberry, if you see, for example, that the pH is going down, that could be related if your plant is really old. When the root zone gets really old, it can tend to acidify the root zone. Or if you have bacteria, you can also see a reduction on pH. Recommended levels for a strawberry will be a pH between 5.5 and 6. If you have higher pH, you can start to notice some deficiencies. For example, pH even higher than the 6.5, you can start to notice iron deficiency. That will be the first symptom. So as I mentioned, we need to check the drip, which is what is going in, and the drainage, which is what is going out. So in order to check our plants, we need to keep the drainage with an EC that is around 1. If it's higher than 1.2, we need to clean with water. and we need to check the pH. So it's normal to have a slow increase in pH. It's not normal to see a decrease in pH. If we have a decrease, it could be because our roots are old or the presence of bacteria. And you can check this at the drainage. So this is just an example. This is not like a specific for a strawberry, but for all crops, the pH will have an effect on how the plant is taking up nutrients. So that is why it's really important to always maintain the recommended levels of pH. So the substrate pH, the recommendations for a strawberry, the same. We need to maintain 5.5 and 6. So we will look to have that for the substrate, like the root zone pH. Now moving to the cation exchange capacity. What is cation exchange capacity? So the cation exchange capacity, in like the most easy way to say, is how the substrate is like modifying our nutrient solution, for example. So in hydroponics, we will look for a low cation exchange capacity. So we're developing formulas. We don't want the substrate to modify the formula that we are providing to our plants, right? So for soil, it's kind of different. For soil, we usually want to have higher cation exchange capacity. But in hydroponics, your substrate, the substrate that you're using, should be a substrate with low cation exchange capacity. So peat moss and coconut coir, they have cation exchange capacity, but it's not like higher enough to say that it's a bad substrate. For coconut coir, as I mentioned, it's important to check the salt content. When you buy coconut coir, you need to ask if that is already clean and you can use it, because sometimes the coconut coir that you buy contain a lot of salts. And you need to clean with water, and sometimes it will take a lot of water to reduce the electrical conductivity in order to start with your plants. So factors affecting the root zone. There are a lot of factors that can affect our root zone in a strawberry. First, we have the substrate, the chemical composition, the physical properties can also affect. We need to look for porosity. The nutrient solution, of course, we need a pH that is low, between 5.5 and 6. Electrical conductivity should not be higher than 1. And of course, the water source. Don't forget about the water source. A lot of people forget about this. It's really important to check and treat your water if needed. And of course, the environment. I mean, I don't have time to provide all information in environment, but we know that strawberry likes humidity. We know that strawberry is kind of also sensitive to high radiation. So that is also important. If you want to get to know a little bit more about the management of this plant in greenhouse or in high tunnels, you can check our guide. We have a guide that is free to download on our website. So you can check that one. And on our booth, we have one that is about fertilizer management, and it's printed. So you can come to the booth and check for that. So last slide. In order to maintain our hydroponic system working well, we need to monitor. There are different kind of sensors that we can use. It's really important to check pH, electrical conductivity. If you're able to check the substrate humidity, that is also good. We need to check this like every day. Drip and drainage. In terms of hydroponic production for a strawberry, we usually use open system. So we don't need to deal with the things that we usually deal for a closed system. Closed system is a little bit more hard to manage. So we only need to check drip, drainage, and try to maintain the characteristic that I already mentioned. Consider the quality in the nutrient solution. I think for a strawberry, there is not, at least that I know, a brand that I can recommend, like fertilizer ready for a strawberry. But I can provide like all the components that you need in order to create the formula. And of course, we need to monitor the crop. So that will be all for me. This is all the team for Hort Americas. Chris Higgins is probably at the booth. And this is my email if you want to have more information about